Hi, ladies and gentlemen. AJ Heitman here, editor emeritus of GEMS, and this is the EMS Today Show. Happy to be with you today. We're going to have a lot of fun. Going to let you meet one of my best friends in the whole world and one of the best colleagues I've ever had in the whole world, Mr. Frank Poliafico. Tell you a little bit about Frank. He happens to come from the same city as me. We'll tell you about that in a second, Scranton, Pennsylvania. He's in Pennsylvania right now, and I'm in Vista, California, north of San Diego. And we're bringing the EMS Today Show to you because we're in tough times, and Frank has a couple important messages to give to you during these tough times. Frank's been in EMS and emergency services for more than 50 years, as have I. And he was an emergency department nurse and nurse manager, a former county EMS director in Pennsylvania. And he later went on to serve as one of the directors of EMS in New York City when it was back in the health and hospital days with those beautiful brown or green uniforms, I guess they were, Frank. And then an internationally known EMS educator and author. He also, later in life, got involved in magic, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. But first of all, Frank, welcome to the show, and it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me, AJ.
Now, I've known you a long time, but we go back to the days you were an emergency nurse in Scranton State Hospital, and you ran into a fire captain there by the name of Captain Arthur Heitman. Am I right?
I certainly did.
And that was my dad. And so you got a chance back in those days. That was truly an accident hospital. That was maybe I'd consider that one of the early trauma hospitals. And you were a young nurse that was very aggressive, and that's where you liked to practice. Am I right?
Emergency department's my home.
And then you went on and we're doing a lot of other things in education, and got a call one day to do a contract course, which to me was it was bittersweet because my dad and his 11 other colleagues in the Scranton Fire Department who'd been doing first aid, I'll call it, for many years, were hauled into a room one day in the upstairs at fire headquarters and summarily flunked by the Pennsylvania Department of Health staff, who shoved 4x4s down mannequins' throats. And it was basically an effort to make sure that all of the paid firefighters in Scranton got forced to become EMTs. And you were one of the lucky souls that was tasked with trying to educate 40, 50-year-old gentlemen who've been doing this for a long time. And you successfully did it. But how'd you do it? It was over 2 weeks, correct?
It was. Well, I had a little bit of experience because although I was living in Scranton that summer I met your dad, all my family's from Scranton. So my mother was a Scrantonite who came down to the Philadelphia area during World War II, met my dad, and stayed down here. So I was raised here, but every summer my life was in Scranton, and I consider that my second home. In any event, here in Delaware County, where I became the EMS director, we were the second EMS council in the state. We had started doing EMT training. I was working with firefighters in the City of Chester Fire Department, very analogous to your dad's group, except at that point, these weren't paid guys. They were all volunteers. Eventually, they became a paid department. So I had some experience in training people who were not academics by any stretch of the imagination, but were really good with common sense in their hands. And so we had to sort of modify how we did it to get the message across to them so that they were comfortable with it. And it worked. They all passed and went on to do great things for the city of Scranton.
I think the interesting thing was that it's not often that a guy could say that he saw his dad cry, but my dad came home. I remember I was a young kid. He was my hero. And he said to my mom with tears in his eyes, "I failed. They told me I'm not good enough to deliver emergency care." And he said, "I've been doing it for 28 years. And because I couldn't pass a silly little practical test, have to go back to school." And at his age, in his 50s, that was probably one of the toughest things he ever did, particularly to do it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I still remember him up in his hallway, studying at his little desk and outlining his book and telling me how to do it. And, he went on to pass. I think there was only one. There was Sammy Weinberg is the guy. And
that's right.
There was about it. He failed. And Sammy only took 1 page of notes that whole class, and he showed it to me when I was there. And it said common sense. He felt it was all common sense. But back in those days, you had to know heart rates and you had to know blood pressure. And Sam really wasn't up to the task. So he pretty much retired after that. But they went on to do some great things. And then they brought in a secret mobile intensive care unit, as I recall. Dr. Pat Ferraro, we remember that name, at Community Medical Center. He got some grant funding. He bought a 23-foot motorhome and had CETA employees on it. And he called all of the Scranton firemen in one day and said, we're starting paramedic service, and these are going to be your paramedics. And you're going to call us on these 12 different calls: stroke and chest pain and respiratory distress. And I remember that my dad came home and said that one of the guys, Gaylord Jones, who you recall, raised his hand and said, well, wait a second, why weren't we trained? And he told them, much like the Navy captain was, you weren't smart enough to be a paramedic. And Gaylord said, you know, if we're not smart enough to be paramedics, we're probably not smart enough to know when to call for your paramedics. And that started the war on the streets of Scranton, where the crews would get there and go around the corner and take their chest pains around the corner to take their vitals and go to the hospital. And then the mobile unit would show up looking for them. And it was an awful game. And then I remember I was at Temple University, my dad called and he said, well, I used the mobile unit 5 times today. And I thought, oh my God, Dad, you got it. You finally realized the need for advanced life support. And he said, oh my God, he said, son, it's great. We call for the mobile unit. They come with their 4 guys on it. They do their little thing. They bring their own stretcher in. All we do is sign on our report, hand over to mobile intensive care unit. We go back in service. So he basically became a first responder toward the end of his career. But I was pretty committed, and I wanted to continue on. And my dad made a contact with this Dr. Mueller. And I didn't know who this Dr. Mueller was. And I went to see him at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and met him in the doctor's changing room. And he said to me, stay in school. And I said, Doctor, I don't want to stay in school. There's this new EMS Act in 1975. I want to get involved. And he said, I think you should stay in school and get your master's degree, become a nurse, like Frank Poliafico. And then next thing I know, I said that I wanted a job in EMS. And he said, you could use me as a reference. And I didn't know at the time that he was actually the Secretary of Health for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and his name meant a lot. And he sent a note to this Frank Poliafico guy saying, I have a guy who wants to take an EMT program. And you were, as I recall, doing a program in a high-rise building downtown Philadelphia, am I right?
Right, the old Arco building right across from City Hall. It was all nurses. It was industrial occupational health nurses. We had developed a course because of my own experience from nursing school. Student nurses had no emergency training whatsoever. And so we developed a curriculum called Basic Emergency Nursing. It was very akin to the EMT class, except without a lot of the anatomy and physiology in it, because they already had that. And assessment skills, they had that too. But the funding for that course ran out. We were doing it in 3 different universities here in the Philadelphia area. And so I had this idea that we could fund the course by doing classes for other nurses, school nurses, occupational health nurses, who also needed some emergency training. And once we did the course for them, then we'd have revenue generated, because I was doing this through the EMS Council, and we would then be able to continue the program for the student nurses. Be as it may, we did a class down at the Arco building, and it was initially a 40-hour class because they already had, as I said, a lot of the basics of the 80 ones. They didn't need the whole class. And I got this call from Dr. Mueller and said, there's this young man that really wants to get into an EMT class, and none of the volunteer ambulance services will let him into their classes. I said, well, we'll take him. So you took a class with a bunch of nurses. You did quite well, as I recall. And the rest is history.
And it was probably because all of the nurses were cute. It was mostly a female class, as I recall. But that was really something that I wanted. And then I went off and I bounced around and found a job in the Allentown, PA area, and advanced up to the director level, which is similar to what you were doing in Chester County. And the rest, as they say, really is history. But we bounced across each other in many parts of our career. And I got this photo that somebody sent to me recently that shows Frank Poliafico and AJ Heitman singing at an amateur hour at EMS Today one year. And I looked at it, and we all look like we're COVID positive in that photo. I don't know what the heck we're doing, but we had a lot of fun doing that. You went off and you did a lot of great things. Go ahead.
Well, I said that picture brings back a memory. As I recall, we won the prize for best trio, and there was just 2 of us.
Yeah, how about it? And I think it was a Frank Sinatra song. Am I right? I
Yes. Yeah.
don't, but and that's really what EMS is all about. EMS is a lot of fun, but in a technical sense, you were always ahead of the curve, and many times the rebel. And you were talking about compression only CPR and AEDs long before it was fashionable, but never gave up on that. And then went off and tell our audience a little bit. I mean, you had a stint in New York City running as the EMS director, but then had a passion for industrial and actually specialty oil rig training and things.
Well, my passion was for the EMS system. I was always a systems guy. While EMS was important, running the streets and riding ambulances, and then the medic units was a passion. I realized that had to fit into the context of the EMS system. One of the early successful EMS programs in Florida was up in Jacksonville, or northern Florida, in Jacksonville, with a captain named John Waters. And I heard him at a conference, at one of the EMS conferences, a famous quote, which has been repeated many times. He said, often people think if they rush to the nearest hospital, be in the arms of Jesus, and 10 minutes later they are. Because back then we didn't have any categorization, and all hospitals thought they were all things to all people. So I realized right away we also had to categorize the hospitals. I knew we had to do training for emergency nurses and emergency physicians. Back in the beginning, we didn't have emergency physicians. If you worked in the ER as a doctor, you were either a deaf cardiologist, a tremorist surgeon, or an anesthesiologist with hemorrhoids. When you couldn't do your chosen specialty, you went to work in the ER. So that evolved, and the whole EMS system was evolving rather rapidly. And I think that the hospital end evolved quickly more because the pressure that EMS put on them. We were doing more in the street than most people could do in their ERs. So that then cranked up training for emergency nurses and emergency physicians. But I realized within 10 years of being the EMS systems guy that I was, that there was a missing link. And the missing link was what happens first. Almost 100% of the time when we would show up, nobody was doing anything. And so we realized we had to train the people who were there first. They were the true first responders with a small F and a small R. And if they weren't doing anything, that our job was going to be a lot harder. So I started doing some classes for Sun Oil on their ships, on their oil tankers. And Sun told Exxon, and Exxon told Arco. And before I knew it, I started a company and was traveling the country and then the world doing emergency medical training on ships and then oil rigs. Then we started with airlines, always concerned with the people who get there first. Within 10 years, that evolved to we really had to do the whole community. I was specialized in isolated areas, but we realized that we had to take this on shore and that a lot of other people needed to be trained. We developed our own first aid and CPR course and made it practical, made it relevant to the students we were teaching. And yeah, we did some things that were outside the scope of what people considered normal, but eventually it caught on. And I've always said that people who had the EMS background that I had, who start to work with the infrequent responders, because that's what they're, I don't like to call them lay people because that sort of diminishes their role. When I was on a ship, I was a lay person. But the reality was these infrequent responders need to be prepared in such a way that was relevant to them. And eventually that message got out, and a lot of other people started to realize that if we're going to do it, we got to do it the way we did it on the street, and then make them comfortable with doing that. And so that evolved, and we then went to when the AEDs come out, I saw that as really the greatest revolution in cardiac arrest care, because despite all we did in EMS, really the mantra of early EMS is we could get to people and defibrillate and do CPR and really make a difference. Well, we couldn't get there fast enough. So we really didn't make the difference in sudden cardiac arrest. We made a difference in trauma, dramatic difference. We made a difference in a lot of the other critical medical conditions, but we didn't do a whole lot for sudden cardiac arrest. So I saw AEDs as being able to do that. I was able to get a foundation started called the AED Instructor Foundation. And we began to assist instructors in their role of not just teaching, but setting up sudden cardiac arrest response programs. Along the lines there, in the process of doing all that stuff that I did, I began doing it because it was now funding my hobby. My hobby was magic. Starting with airplane travel where it was boring, I found that if I could do a card trick or two for a flight attendant, I could drink free. So I drank free a lot. It was wonderful. But I then started doing the tricks and introducing them into the classroom, was doing it for students to either keep their attention or sometimes to teach a point. And by 95, it was when I turned pro. I joined the Academy of Magical Arts in Hollywood, the Magic Castle. And so I became a professional magician, although my real focus on magic was to use it in my classroom. And I did a lot of benefits, especially for EMS organizations and hospitals and the like. Um,
And
and when I
your
retired,
passion
I started doing a lot more.
and your passion, like mine, is to help a lot of groups like the veterans. And right now, I do therapy dog work, and my dogs are they're idled because I can't take them to the VA hospital that's on lockdown to outside visitors and therapy teams. So I do other things with my pups these days. But and you're kind of on a hiatus from magic, so your daughter came up with a great idea.
Yeah, I was sitting here somewhat depressed and bored that I couldn't get out and do magic in the VA hospitals where I was going into. My oldest daughter's an emergency nurse practitioner. I used to go to her ER and entertain the patients, and I wasn't going to any of those places thanks to this period of confinement. So my youngest daughter said, Dad, why don't you we'll do a video and put it online, and that way people get to see some magic while they're. Well, first she wanted me to do it live, and that didn't quite work. So we wound up doing a couple videos, and we put them online. And they're available for anybody. It's just as a diversion from these periods of not being able to do what you normally do.
And I happen to see that on Facebook, and thus bringing you on the Today Show, the EMS Today Show, because you wanted to give back to the EMS responders who are out there. They're tired, they're beat up after a shift, and they love amazing things. And I've found that EMS responders love magic. I've been with you many times at conferences where you've just amazed people. So that 15-minute segment's already up on gems.com, along with this segment of the EMS Today Show. We're going to put up your second show, so people will have 30 minutes of magic. But talk to us a little bit about the Magic Castle, because I don't think people realize if, in Los Angeles, there is such a thing called the Magic Castle.
Well, it's the most unique entertainment center in the world. It's an old Victorian mansion that was bought by a couple of brothers whose father had been in vaudeville, and they wanted to do something in honor of him. So they created this magic club, and took this old mansion that was absolutely gorgeous on the hills in Hollywood, above Hollywood Boulevard, and turned it into a private club for magicians. You go in and have a gourmet meal into this adorable place, which you can talk more about because you were there. And then you have, after a gourmet meal, you go to little theaters, 25, 30 seats, and watch the best magicians in the world. There's one theater with 100 seats that they do a stage show, but most of the magic there is close up. There's 5 bars. There's guys doing magic at the bar. There's over 5,000 members. It's one of 3 international organizations for magicians. You have to be a member to go, or have an invitation from a member. So I'm very happy to give out invitations to anybody that wants to go. Very classy place, coat and tie for guys. And it really is, it's the home of magic. Most magic shows, up until the last year or so, if you saw a magic show, it was filmed at the Magic Castle, because that's the home of it's the headquarters of magic.
And yeah, my experience was Frank invited my wife and I. He makes 2 trips out at least annually, and tries to go out on his birthday every year. Am I right? And,
yes.
And Betsy and I went up, and we walked in, and there was a beautiful bunch of bookcases, and they said, "Who are you here for?" And I said, "Mr. Poliafico." And they said, "Follow me." And the guy stood up and turned around, and the bookcase turned around, and we walked through the bookcase into the catacombs of the building. And I thought, holy cow, we really are in a magic castle. And we went into these rooms, and like you said, 25 seats, and you could see, you try and study the hands and the actions, and each magician is just one-upping the other. And we had a wonderful dinner with you, and then saw a stage show. I think it was back when they had the movie about the North Korean dictator and the puppets, and oh my God, it was fabulous. And I've never forgotten that. So at the end, we'll give you Frank's email address. If you're going to get out to LA, he can send you an invitation, tickets to be able to go to the Magic Castle. He's been very gracious to my wife, who does a lot of community fundraising, and anybody that's ever gone there has just been totally amazed. But I wanted to ask if we could impose on you to kind of show us a little bit about your magic, Frank.
Sure. Here's one that I've just developed lately. Let me open up the deck for it. I want everybody to see. I'm opening up a brand new deck of cards. It's hard to see sometimes with the cameras.
And we'll force you to go slow so we can find out.
Right, I'm going to go slow. I'm going to take it out of the box now. Now, what's amazing with this deck of cards, I hope you can see it here. Can you see those?
Yeah, they're a little too bright. You might have to go back a little bit. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, all different. But if you'll notice, in the difference, there's one card that's upside down. Can you spot that card upside down there?
Hang on a second. Hard to see. There we go. Yep.
Yeah, there's the lights right.
Backwards.
One card and one card only is upside down. AJ, I want you to think of a card, any one at all.
All right. I'm thinking.
You got it?
I got it.
Say the name of that card.
5 of clubs.
Would it be amazing if the value of your card appeared on this card that I turned over and is upside down?
It would.
What are the odds of that? Yeah, 1 in 52. Well, if I take this card and I turn it upside down, turn it right side up, what you'll notice is, let me see if I can get this to do it the right way, is every card in the deck is pictured there, actually. It's 52 cards on one. It's kind of hard to see. It's really small print.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, 52. So your card is on there. It's a good trick for getting a free drink. You bet somebody you could pick their card.
That's right.
But that's cheating. Let's do it a little bit more sophisticated. I want you to name another card, any card at all. Just name it.
3 of diamonds.
3 of diamonds. Now imagine that the 3 of diamonds is in this deck. Let me get these out. Pick up the deck here. Okay. If I can do this again, I'll show you all these cards.
Okay.
Kind of hard to see.
A little fast and blurry, but we got it.
Let's get it. There.
There you go.
See those?
Yeah.
I have to get I don't have stage lighting in here. All these cards are face up. I'll go through them slow. However, but the card you picked, if you look again, is the only one that's face down. Now imagine that not only is it face down, so that I didn't switch something here. Let me pull back here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine not only is it upside down, I want you to imagine that the 3 of diamonds has a big X on it.
Yes, sir.
None of the cards here have an X. You can see that. But the 3 of diamonds, as you're going to see, has a big X on it.
Oh, okay. Amazing.
The only card in the deck with an X on it.
Amazing.
That's called mind reading.
I could get you to do my trip reports for me.
Well, I make a lot of things up. That's good. I can do that for you. Not the best venue. The camera here is not the best for doing magic, but I urge anybody who'd like to have a little fun and relaxation, turn on to those videos and watch them. There's also a lot of other great magic that's popping up. People are putting little tricks on my page and on Facebook just so they want to show off their trick. One of a 12-year-old girl in Hawaii. She's as good as any magician I saw at the Magic Castle. She's unbelievable. She does some great stuff. That's on that page too on Facebook.
Now, have you ever have you used this in your practice as a nurse? Have you ever done it during idle times with patients?
Well, when I wasn't into magic when I was working clinically. I haven't worked in the hospital clinically in quite a while. But when I retired 4 years ago, my oldest daughter, who's the emergency nurse practitioner, said, "Dad, we could use some help. We'd like you to come to the ER, and we'll make you the ER nurse concierge." My job was to go around and greet the visitors who were there with the patients, and obviously those who weren't critical. And as they were waiting for tests and consults or waiting for a bed, do some magic for them. So it's been a great thrill because as a nurse, I found out that it was very comforting to patients. It minimized pain very often, took their mind off of what was going on. The patients just love it. And so I tell people I have all the joy of being an ER nurse with no responsibility. And so that then led me to start doing the VA hospitals and some others here in our community. It is very gratifying to see patients who are not critical but are otherwise bored. If they're not getting clinically treated at the moment, they're bored. So it gave them a diversion, and I think that psychosocial need that patients have has to be met, and this way is doing it.
Yeah, and I find the same pleasure with my 2 Bernese mountain dogs. Charlie and Cooper rotate and come with me to the VA hospital and the VA clinics, and it's amazing when they get with a team of 5 other dogs, how their personality changes and how rewarding it is, not just for the patients, but for their family and for the staff as well. We get
Absolutely.
a chance to go into the young residents and let them off leash. The only time in the hospital we can do that. And oh my God, they just love it. What's the best email address if somebody wanted to contact you?
My magic address is Frankie Closeup, Frankie, Frankie Closeup, CLOSEUP, at AOL.com. So Frankie Closeup at AOL.com. Drop me a note if you're going to be in the LA area and tell me you'd like to go to the Magic Castle. We'll be happy to get you an invitation. You can then go online and read the rules. There are some rules about dress code and no pictures and things like that. But it is just a marvelous night of entertainment. You can get there at 6 o'clock and stay till 2 or 3 in the morning and just watch magic constantly and different magicians.
And actually, folks in EMS, that's a priceless gift from Frank to you. And Frank, you've been a leader. I was thinking about Captain Waters in Jacksonville, and many people don't know the name Jacksonville Fire, but boy, they were one of the leaders. And if you want to have some fun, go onto YouTube and search for Sirens in the Night. It's a video that was produced way, way back when they started advanced life support, and I think they were swab ambulances. And my favorite is probably about 30 seconds into the intro. They come around a highway curve while they were filming that, and you can only see 2 wheels touching the ground on the highway. So it certainly wasn't a highway safety training film, but they were really some of the pioneers. And I have Gene Nagel and Ron Stewart and a few other luminaries in the business that'll be on with me, as well as experts in the field on COVID-19, so that we can really keep you up to date. That's really what I really want the EMS Today show to be all about. We'll have some fun, we'll shed some tears, and we'll share some knowledge. So thank you again, Frank, and AJ Heitman signing off from the EMS Today show.
Thanks for having me, AJ. Appreciate it.
Sure.